Please try and disregard the static in the screen right now. I'm actually a targeted individual, and I believe that the interference in the picture is coming from an electronic weapon that's being used on me from the apartment downstairs. My TV shows crystal clear, and so that interference, I believe, is, the frequency or something coming from the device being used on me. Anyway, hope you enjoy the video.
Classified documents leaked by Edward Snowden exposed a program of large-scale data collection of citizens by the United States government. But when it comes to collecting your personal digital details, that is only part of the story.
Okay, so governments, that's one threat. But businesses are also collecting way more information than they should. We now have a stalker economy where customers become products.
A stalker economy where thousands of shadowy companies make billions tracking our digital lives.
The business model was, how do we offer something without making people pay for it in cash? And they said they're going to pay in data.
And there's no shortage of hungry clients eager to get their hands on your personal data. Inside the lucrative business of harvesting and selling your online life. In a tech industry known for blockbuster deals, the last few years saw some of the biggest.
Share photos on Instagram. A company with only 13 employees bought today by Facebook for $1 billion.
This morning, the social media behemoth is buying the messaging company WhatsApp. Facebook will pay $19 billion in cash and stock.
But neither company had anything in the way of profits.
Everyone says, well, why? They don't make any money. And the truth is that the business model has changed. The business model is to monetize your data.
Monetize is right. Your data is worth millions to insurers, employers, and advertisers looking to target the right consumers. The more they know about you, the better.
When you ask what information are these companies collecting, the answer is everything. They want to know where we go, who we're with, what we're buying, what websites we're going to. And they want to collect all of that and aggregate it and then sell it to everybody.
Some of these companies have familiar names, others you've probably never heard of. Companies like Datalogics, eBureau, Info Group, Recorded Future, Axiom, and Epsilon. And the list goes on. It's a complex and growing network of data collectors, data brokers, and online advertisers.
They have these files that are robust about which magazines you read, what property you own, court records, criminal records, your car records, and then online stuff, what you shop for. So they know a lot about people.
Special software reveals just how many companies are watching you.
You go onto a website and there are perhaps hundreds of different kinds of trackers making a note that you were there for all kinds of different reasons.
Those companies argue that what they do is key to the internet economy. Lee Freund is head of a data tracking trade group.
It's a $150 billion industry, and it supports millions of jobs and is a piece of the internet economy that must continue for the internet to continue to be free.
The problem is that they're telling you a half-truth. What these companies want to do is focus only on the upside. We are giving you free stuff. We are giving you more directed stuff. But what they're not telling you is who we're giving it to and what we're going to do with it.
Experts say that it's what we don't know about the data being collected that may come back to haunt us in the future.
So say a company says, okay, this person bought a deep fryer, they don't have a gym membership, they don't have a Fitbit, they bought cigarettes, and it can sell that profile to to an insurance company who can then use that profile to deny the consumer a benefit without the consumer ever knowing why.
We grew up reading 1984. The big threat was that there was going to be a large government that knew everything about us, and because of that was able to really control us. But it's turned out that it's the large businesses that are going to have this amount of information. And once they have that, the amount of power they have over us is really frightening.
All of this has many asking, how can we regain control of our own personal data? Enter visionary privacy expert Jonathan Mayer. At age 28, he's considered one of the nation's leading authorities on data collection.
The rule of thumb in the US is as long as you don't lie to users, you can track them using just about any technology you want.
As a student at Stanford, Mayer uncovered a Google strategy to thwart privacy settings in the Safari browser.
Google had found a way to bypass those privacy settings, allowing the company to track the activity of millions of users without those users knowing.
Led to what was then the biggest violation fine ever leveled by the Federal Trade Commission. Mayer had found his calling as a computer privacy activist, and the burgeoning data collection industry began to see him as a threat to their business. He joined with the W3C, the consortium that sets internet standards, to help a team develop a program they called Do Not Track.
The kind of simplest explanation for do not track is it's a signal that your web browser sends out to websites saying, here's my preference about privacy. An easy analogy that a lot of folks use is it's kind of like sticking a no trespassing sign in your yard. Users really don't like being followed all over the place. And so, gee, if users don't like this, maybe it would make sense to give them some reasonable control.
To find a solution, W3C recruited a group of online advertisers, internet companies, and privacy advocates. But with the future of a multi-billion-dollar industry at stake, the gloves soon came off.
I was one of the more outspoken folks in the group. So the combination of leading voice on the issue plus threat to the industry, maybe I was a target to get knocked off.
At the W3C, a high-level working group was trying to give consumers privacy choices. One solution was called Do Not Track.
So it started out as a reasonably small collection of geeks.
It may have seemed small, but there was big money at stake. Do Not Track struck at the heart of big data's multi-billion-dollar business, and they began to exert their influence.
Trade groups started to take more and more seats at the table. The very clear strategy there was to make sure that if anything that wasn't acceptable to the industry got any serious traction, there were enough people in the room to put the brakes on.
Julia Angwin, an investigative reporter for ProPublica, says the mood in the Do Not Track team soon turned hostile.
The thing that really was shocking to me as an observer of the Do Not Track debate was how crazy personal it became. And I was really surprised that they were so threatened by this idea.
The idea that was so threatening was a browser preference that allowed users to easily opt out of third-party tracking, and Mayer was seen as a leading advocate. The president of the nation's leading online advertising group called him a Bolshevik of the internet world. According to Mayer, the insults got much worse.
One of the VPs at a very, very large software engineering company referred to me as, quote, fucking motherfucker, unquote, which I thought was delightful, really classy of him.
Mayer says that the attacks went beyond name-calling and that his opponents even tried to damage his standing at Stanford, where he was enrolled as a graduate student.
There were folks from advertising trade groups who started raising questions around my status at Stanford. Who exactly I worked for, and who exactly paid me, and what my responsibilities were. My initial reaction was very much spooked, kind of scared, trying to figure out, should I walk back what I'm doing in the working group, maybe just withdraw?
Stanford decided to stand by their graduate student.
I can't help but imagine that if a student were at a different university under different circumstances, it would have ended pretty differently.
Just what made these trade groups so uncomfortable?
I know that Jonathan was a very active player in the Do Not Track debate, and has very strong views.
But Mayer was not the only one with very strong views. Freund wants users to go to her group's website to opt out of being tracked by each and every data broker. There are close to 100.
offer a viable alternative for folks that are not comfortable with tracking and that they can opt out on our website.
But privacy experts cry foul.
Many of these so-called data brokers offer you the opportunity to maybe opt out, but that's very difficult to even know whether you're a part of the database to begin with. You could spend every Sunday afternoon you have looking into each of these data brokers and trying to figure out who's got what.
Even sites that contain our most personal medical information aren't immune.
It turned out healthcare.gov had some third-party trackers baked into it. The NIH at various points has had this problem, and so did the UK's National Health Service.
One fear is that much of the information gathered on these sites could become public knowledge by being breached or exposed.
People don't want their neighbors to necessarily know that they're undergoing chemotherapy. They don't want their employers to know that they're taking anti-anxiety pills, that they're in marriage counseling or personal counseling.
Though data trackers insist that they have controls in place to prevent this scenario, they remain committed to collecting data on a level that is almost unimaginable.
The amount of information that we have in total is measured in petabytes rather than megabytes or even gigabytes. And that information spans all of the users who we see across the internet going back in time.
Investigative reporter Julia Anglin thought she knew all about big data, but even she was taken aback when she checked with Google and found that they'd kept her search history going back years.
It was this incredible thing. It was more intimate than a diary. I could see each one of my days, and I felt like I didn't want anyone to have this information. It was very revealing, and I was shocked that it was all stored there forever.
For a tech reporter based in New York City, Julia Anglin did the unusual.
I quit using Google, I changed my email services, I tried to take as many steps as possible without actually living in a shed.
For a full year, Anglin also took on a digital alias. She disguised herself online as the early 20th century muckraking journalist who took down Standard Oil, Ida Tarbell.
I set up an email account for her, then I set up a phone, I got a credit card for her, I got an Amazon account for her, eventually got a postal address.
But living as Ida Tarbell had its limitations.
When you're talking about tracking that really is based on your behavior, which is the world we're in, which is based on your location and your calling patterns, it's actually not that much of a mask to have that fake identity. Anyone who looked at those patterns would very quickly be able to figure out who it's me.
Even if you're not using people's name, address, or traditional methods of personal identification, people are using persistent identifiers, whether it's a cookie, an ad ID on a mobile device, an IP address that can be reverse engineered to determine who a consumer is.
I think, unfortunately, like the best optimistic view of my success was that it might have been 50% successful.
Data trackers and their representatives insist that this tracking is essential to the internet economy.
Internet websites have to have a way to pay their people and to make money and to monetize their sites.
To monetize, websites turn to companies like Rocket Fuel.
The amount of information that we have in total is measured in petabytes rather than megabytes or even gigabytes. And that information spans all of the users who we see across the internet going back in time.
At Rocket Fuel, artificial intelligence is used to plow through those petabytes of data. They say that AI can pinpoint the exact time a specific consumer will be most susceptible to a particular ad.
The type of ad that Rocket Fuel might show me would be different when I'm sitting in front of my computer compared with when I'm sitting on the couch looking at my phone, listening to the baseball game.
And big data has moved far beyond mere record gathering. Our physical movements are also being tracked. Wi-Fi trackers in stores can connect with our phones.
Data can be collected about you as you're walking down the street.
If you stop somewhere, they're like, oh, she's stopping there. Oh, and then now she's walking here. So they build these little traffic patterns of how people behave in their store.
Devices like smartphones, tablets, and TVs can also communicate with one another through something called an audio beacon.
Audio beacons are high-frequency tones that are placed in advertisements so that other devices in the area can tell what ad is playing in the background.
These high-frequency signals are emitted in a range that the human ear can't pick up. I'm not even sure that a dog can pick them up.
Audio beacon technology has already been embedded in millions of downloaded mobile apps. chance you have one installed in your phone or tablet right now. When the high-frequency tone emitted from an online ad or TV commercial is picked up by these apps, information about you is sent back to the advertiser, who can now use your device to track your behavior.
That's a way of correlating behavior across technologies. So you can tell when this particular smartphone user is watching that particular TV channel.
Reading your emotions and even controlling your mood may be the next step in our stalker economy. In January 2012, Facebook conducted an experiment into emotional manipulation. 600,000 unsuspecting Facebook users were divided into two groups, one happy and one sad.
If you log on to Facebook and you were in the happy group, you would see updates from your friends that only contained the happy news. And if you were in the other group, you would see updates from your friends that only contained sad news. They were studying whether would that make you feel sadder or happier. It was a study of emotional contagion.
The emotional contagion worked. The happy group posted more positive status updates, while the sad group's postings got more negative, showing that the content of a news feed could influence a user's mood.
This is how the tech sector works now. We manipulate our users intentionally. We want them to go certain places. We want them to buy certain things. We want them to have positive emotions when using our website. And it is now far easier than ever to quantify those things and engineer them.
From his base in Chicago, lawyer Jay Edelson is handling a lawsuit that may determine the future of big data collection and the recourse users may have when that information is wrong.
The first question is, did you know about this? And if the answer is yes, we knew about it. We were sued over it, and we won on a technicality and didn't fix the problem. That's it.
In this landmark case, his target is Spokio, a big player in online dating.
What I would say about Spokio, you probably haven't heard of them, but they've definitely heard about you. What they build themselves as is a company where you can go on the web and you can search for somebody and find out a lot of information.
Edelson's client discovered that Spokio was selling a profile of him. That was bad enough, but it was also filled with false information.
A lot of their algorithms just didn't work, but they were so eager to get moving that they put this out there, and millions and millions of people just had totally wrong information.
But Edelson and other privacy advocates believe that, right or wrong, the easy availability of tracked information is a ticking time bomb for most Americans.
It'll be the idea that for reasons that are not immediately obvious to you, but have to do with data on the back end, you've been denied credit or you've been denied insurance.
The Supreme Court will decide the Spokio case in 2016, and all eyes in the data collection industry will be watching.
Spokio would have enormous ramifications for the area of being able to hold companies accountable for the kinds of errors and other practices that they do.
But it's not just corporations and businesses who are eager to make use of this endless amount of consumer data.
The government can be a customer like any other, and so once some private party has collected information about you, they can buy it.
After months of struggle, Jonathan Mayer gave up on his vision of a do-not-track system.
It was very clear, these guys are not in the room to get a deal. They're in the room to make sure that their industry continues business as usual.
Though he quit the do-not-track group in frustration, that didn't slow him down. In 2015, Mayer's skills and passions were recognized by the Federal Communications Commission, which appointed him as their chief enforcement technologist.
The fact that they're bringing people like Jonathan Mayer online in enforcement is a sign that they're finally serious about wrapping their heads around how the tech actually works.
Ironically, the U.S. government is also strengthening their partnership with online trackers. Some government branches have become big data's biggest customers, and in doing so, may be doing an end run around the Constitution.
The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution places limits on the ability of the government to collect data about people. But the government can be a customer like any other. And so once some private party has collected information about you, they can buy it. There's no limit on that.
Julia Anglin's year-long experiment showed her that one of the few ways of keeping her private life private was through the use of encryption.
I could browse the web, pretty much untraceable. I could use email that was really encrypted.
Encryption stands in the way of mass surveillance. surveillance state is based on this collect-it-all mentality, encryption is going to be a problem.
Law enforcement's problem with encryption became clear after attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, California, led Director James Comey to say the FBI needed access to encrypted communications.
We see that encryption is getting in the way of our ability to have court orders effective to gather information we need in our most important work.
Comey wants technology companies to engineer access into their products. Apple has resisted.
The government hopes to get to a place where if a judge issues an order, the company figures out how to supply that information.
Technologists and advocates call that a backdoor. They say it will also make our data vulnerable to criminals and foreign powers.
It's not possible to make a backdoor that only law enforcement can walk through. Bad actors are going to find that door and they're going to walk right through it.
Privacy activists believe that controlling tracking would go a long way in protecting people's private data.
What if we had advertising-based business models or other business models that supported the websites that folks love, but didn't involve following users all over the place? Why shouldn't we try to move the world in that direction?
The debate is gaining national attention and being raised on the presidential campaign trail.
You would all be amazed, or maybe not, about the amount of information private companies and the government has.
For many privacy advocates, it's a critical issue that needs to be addressed now.
Information is power. You should be concerned about the fact that they have all the information and you have none. Companies simply know too much, and it's the obligation of the law and of consumers to find that line and draw it.
America is based on individualism and freedom. And people shouldn't know what we're reading, what we're listening to.
What we should call it is human rights. We want rights around our data. We want the right to see it. We want the right to contest it if it's wrong. We want the right to fight if it's being used against us.